Okay, folks, just a couple of minutes early here, but let's kick this off. For anybody who has not been following along with any of these series, this is my live stream model build. Now, most of it's being done here on camera. I'm doing some of it behind the scenes just to get caught up to be interesting when we're live. And this is what I'm building. This is the Revell 148 scale B-24D. It is the original monogram molding, so it's the old 70s style molding, raised detail, all that other fun stuff. And I'm doing this up as a Coastal Command RAF bird. So it's going to be the white with the two-tone gray British markings. And I'm using quite a bit of aftermarket in it. I've got a Belcher Bits radar chin radar pod, Belcher Bits lay light. I've got Belcher Bits torpedoes and sonobuoys. And I'm using Wild Sow Resins rocket wings along with the British style tail turret. Finishing it all off with the aviology decals. So let's get into it. This is episode 8. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, you can always go back, watch those first, come back to this, get caught up before you jump into this particular video. I have done quite a bit offline in preparation for this video. I realized that this kit has been sitting here for nearly a year, and it was nowhere near as finished as I would have liked. I started it with my last round. I finished the 3 kits, still worked on this, started the next round, and then 3 kits are ready for paint, and this thing was still partially built. So I spent most of the past month or so focused on getting this built up. Obviously, it's the holidays and everything else in December, which kind of eats into my free time. But we're ready for another live stream. So I'm going to quickly catch you up on where we got to. So with the wings, they are 100% ready for paint. The big things I had to do was clean up these seams here on the sides, which I have done. Give it a quick hit with primer. I've also cleaned up some of the leading edges here where the de-icing boots are. Trailing edges don't look too bad at all, so they're pretty much ready to go. Same with this wing. As you can see, it's all 100% ready to go for final paint. So these have been put aside. Most of the work I was doing was on the fuselage just due to the sheer amount of work I had to do. And so this is now what it looks like. It's all primer. You'll see all the clear parts are on. It's all masked. I've cleaned up all the seams. The tail's glued on. Those seams have been cleaned up. All of the clear perspex up here, all the masking is done. More importantly, these stub wings have been mounted. Now, these were a bit of a job. Wild Cell Resin provides these with their conversion, which includes these, some vacuum form, and a British style tail turret. And I realized looking at references, and again, this book has been a huge help. The Wing Leader Photo Archive number 30, specifically on the RAF Coastal Command Liberator versions. And there's a good section in here where they cover these rocket wings. It's in here somewhere if I can find it. Yeah, there's a good picture here of the stub wings, which is going to help me when it comes time to mount my little support struts. I'm going to have to play around. Obviously, these are way too long. We'll go into this in detail in a second. But yeah, there's some more here and here. And this was a good, important drawing. I was able to get the orientation this way, and then this helped me orient things a little bit better in terms of shape. Now, what I did find out by doing that was that the Wild Sow Resin stub wings are way too large in both width and length. Width I wasn't too worried about, simply because it's going to be very difficult to modify that. You've got the blended piece in here, the fairing piece that blends it to the fuselage. If you adjust the width of the wing, you have to adjust that. That's not going to be easy. What I was able to do was adjust the length. They were too long. And it was enough that the casual observer wasn't going to notice it. The problem is when you put the wings and everything on, the prop blades would hit the wing, and it was very obvious that these wings extended into the prop arc, so they needed to be modified. So I cut the wings back a little bit, changed the angle to bone match pictures. It's negligible to the point that it's almost non-noticeable once you get everything finished and cleaned up, and you won't even really notice that they're slightly oversized. That gets us effectively to where I am now. So what I plan to do in this video, it's probably not going to take the full hour. We'll see. I don't think we'll be here for the full hour, so it might be a little early for you guys. But what I plan to do is I'm going to do some work on the torpedoes, which I have just off site here. I specifically was prepping these because this is what I needed to show, was that. I'm probably going to do a little tiny bit of work on the tail turret, and I'll prep some more of the pieces I have here that need to be ready to go for paint, because that is the next step, is I need to start painting the white on this, and that's like everything. The whole belly, the underside, the bottom of the wings, all that stuff gets painted white. So I need to get that stuff prepped to go before I can do that. So first things first, let's jump into the depth charges. And this is one I've been putting off. I shouldn't say putting off. This is the one I really wanted to do in this video. I'm going to tighten you up a little bit on the camera just so you get a better look at this. And this, like I said, this is a really important part of what I want to cover, because I'm going to show you the unpainted parts. I honestly... Oh, there they are. So this has just a base coat of Vallejo wood, this color here, spray painted onto it. The final one, so it's a little hard for you to see what's happening here. There's a torpedo nose cone that's been sandwiched around a wooden cylinder. And that wooden cylinder is designed, when this hits the surface of the water, the cylinder breaks off and it slows it down and keeps the torpedo shallow. This is the same technology that the Japanese used at the attack on Pearl Harbor and the British used in the attack of Toronto Harbor to keep torpedoes shallow. So this is the same step that they're doing. Now, this will have to be glued together, and there will be a bit of a seam to fill. I'm going to super glue that, probably use a little tiny bit of baking soda or baking powder, can't remember which one it is, to give that some strength, but that'll be glued together. The body will be black. The tip of the nose in here will be black, and then this cylinder will be wood, and then there is a wooden cover that goes across the fins like that. That also, same idea, when it hits the water, these will break off, the nose will break off, and the torpedo will stay shallow. But this needs to be painted up in wood grain. If you've seen any of my other videos, you would have seen me do wood grain on the World War I aircraft, which are sitting right here. But this is what they look like after the wood grain. And I'm going to try to get you, you know what, I'm just going to zoom it in. That's the easier way to do it. That is the wood grain. So you can, now that obviously that's a little smooch. I touched it. But now the oil paints take a few days to dry, so that's why I ended up touching it by accident. I'll just make sure that that sits up inside the plane so you'll never need to see it. But that is the wood grain. It will look a lot better when I get a little bit of weathering, and you also have to realize how small that is compared to the tip of my finger. When this is weathered and this is up inside the plane, you'll never notice it. And same with the wood grain on the fins. You can see how good that looks. It looks like a sheet of plywood. These will get painted aluminum, the little strips on all four corners, and same up here. These strips, if you can focus properly, those little strips, the two on each side, will get painted aluminum. This body will be black, the tip will be black. And then once all of that's done and you get a bit of black wash on that, it's going to look amazing. So what I'm going to do now is actually show you how to do this wood graining effect. As I said, we started off by painting this in a Vallejo wood color. Any wood color will work. That what you need to ensure is that you are using differential colors. It's best to do this with a water-based paint because we're going to use an oil to do the work. Now, you also want to find a way to clip it. I'm going to do this in two halves. That's the other point I should make, is I did this in two separate steps. So the seam down the middle isn't continuous. So the grains don't match. My smearing of the wood, it does not match. So it looks like it's two separate pieces of wood. So to do that, it's very easy. I'll just do one side and then do the other side. So what I'll do, I'll use a Post-it, low tack Post-it, and I can just put that along that seam line. Maybe. No, it's not going to work. I'll figure that out in the next one. I did that with the other piece with some masking tape, and I actually peeled the paint off, so I need to find a slightly better process for that. But anyways, long story short, let's clip this, and I will do the first layer of wood grain. When you do this, because it's an oil, you have to let this thing sit for like 3 or 4 days before you can do the second one. So it takes quite a while, which is why I've also been putting off doing this video. As I said, did some wood grain. I was out of town for a couple of days, and then we rolled into Christmas. So what I have here is just, this is a Van Gogh brand. I'm not sure if this is internationally available or just a Canadian. It looks international. It's in various languages. Yeah, this is a paint from the Netherlands. This is what I'm getting. It was what I was available to find locally. It is an oil color, specifically burnt sienna. So I'm just going to dab a little bit out on a piece of paper towel, just absorb some of that excess oil. And I have myself a thin, flat brush. Also good to have a Q-tip. This is a pointed Q-tip, which makes life a little harder. I'm going to dab that point off. Now, the magic. Load up your paintbrush and then literally just paint it on. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be careful. You just paint it on. And you take your Q-tip and you just rub it. I have this paper towel here. I can dab the Q-tip. You'll see here in a second. The Q-tip loads up pretty quickly with paint. And already you can start to see that look. So then I'll dab that, get the paint out. I'll zoom you in just a little bit so you can get a slightly better view of that. So there it is. If it'll focus properly. Then I'll take my Q-tip and I'll just run it across. And there is your wood grain. You want it to be slightly imperfect. You don't want it to be smooth or, you know, you want it to look imperfect. That's what you're going for, is with the wood grain. That's why I'm not being careful in the slightest. You want the variation. Sometimes you can just start midway through the wood, go both directions. If you end up taking too much off, you can just come back and reload. Make it a little bit of a varied paint and then just lightly brush it. Right, and then you get yourself a nice wood grain pattern. I'm going to jam some in here because that looks a little too light. Nice gentle smearing. And I'm happy with that. That's all it takes. Now, as I said, because I have the clip on this side, I won't be able to complete that side until I do my second pass. But I'll go through and do this side as well. That looks perfect to me. Now, the inside, particularly on this design, isn't as important because you're not really going to see it. I'm just going to do the inside just so that you know, when you do look inside, you see something. Doesn't have to be nearly as precise as the outside, just as long as it looks like, you know, there's busyness going on in there. You don't want it to be just plain, you know, blank the layout color. So yeah, just quickly. Now the other thing I've come to realize, the ends, you can't leave light, so I'm just going to use the little bit that I have on the end of the Q-tip just to darken it up a little bit. Think of it as if you're actually staining a piece of wood. It's almost the same process. Put it on, wipe it off. And yeah, So that's that. That's all it takes. Now this has to sit for 3 days. I've been told you can use, like, if you let this oil sit for a while before you use it, a lot of the excess oil will be absorbed by the Kleenex, or if you use a piece of cardboard, and it'll just evaporate off, and it'll dry faster. I'm not organized enough to have this sit for hours before I use it, so this is how I'm doing it. So same thing, I'm just going to go along, use the Q-tip, unload it when you get too much paint on it. Give it a random smearing. I think that's it. I think that will do it. I can see one spot up here where I took just a little bit too much off. But yeah, I am very happy with how that turned out. So I'm going to let that dry. That's it. That's how you do wood grain. I do plan eventually to do a tips and tricks video on this. I might even do the tips and tricks video when I do the other part of that I have to finish in a couple of days, and I will get that uploaded so you guys can reference back to that if you do want to see it. I also highly recommend Nigel's Modeling Desk has a tutorial out on how to do wood grain. That's how I learned this, was taking a look at that channel and his tutorial. So by all means, don't rely on me. I'm not going to gatekeep this at all. There's very, very good tutorials on YouTube here if you want to learn this from anyone else you'd like to learn it from. But I recommend you go out and learn it, because it was one of those skills that once I did it and I was able to look at it, and it was just mind-blowing how good it was. I mean, my propellers, I just zoomed out and now you can't see anything. The propellers for my World War I fighters look amazing. Unfortunately, all the other wood grain is masked off on the World War I fighters, so you can't really see any. But actually, I shouldn't say that. I've also got, for example, the this is a tail skid for the Albatross, and I have the wingtip skids. I'll zoom in nice and tight on this one. These are the little wingtip wooden skids for the Fokker triplane. So you can see how well that has turned out. When that gets mounted on the wingtip, it's going to look really, really good with a subtle black wash. So it's a very, very simple technique, but it plays really well. It sells the look. And it's so easy to do. So I highly recommend anybody out there who does want to learn wood grain, watch the tutorial videos and give it a shot. I think that was about $7 or $8 for that set of oils, and that oils will probably last me. They'll probably go bad before I use them all. So highly, highly recommend you guys learn it if you do. So that was the wood grain. As I said, now we have to wait a good chunk of time before I can do anything else with that. I have started work on the tail turret. This is the tail turret. This came from the Wild Sow kit. It is the a 4-gun turret style that was mounted on the Halifaxes that got mounted on some of the Coastal Command Liberators. And again, this book has all the really good references in it. If you go through, you will find there are pictures in here of that style. Here we go with this particular drawing. You'll be able to see it mounted there. There are, as I said, pictures. There's a perfect one right there with the British style. I believe it's a bolt and pawl turret that was fitted. Doesn't say in the notes. I'm pretty sure it's a bolt and pawl turret that was fitted. The same one, as I said, that was fitted to the Halifaxes that they fitted to the B-24s. And that's what this is. Now, unfortunately, it's a really bad molding. It's a garage kit. The resin is really bad. I mean, the quality of this thing is horrible. It's bubbly. It's out of shape. This vacuum form is really bad. I tried to clean it up as best I could. It doesn't really fit the best. So I'm really going to have to play with this. I'm not going to glue this on camera. There's just too much work I need to do. But I will have to. I've already gloss coated this. I've used Future floor wax. As you can tell by how yellow this is, I've had this for like 20 years. But yeah, that will, if you coat your clear in a Future floor wax or similar product, when you super glue, it won't fog up. If you normally super glue a clear part, the fumes from the super glue will actually fog the surface of the clear parts, and then you won't be able to see through them. So the Future will protect it from that. So I will have to super glue this onto this base at some point, and then go around and try to sand off this ridge, clean it all up, mask it off, get the frames painted on, and then glue the barrels on after. I did save the barrels from the Lancaster kit. I'm going to use those because the barrels that came in this kit are absolute junk. So it'll be better than nothing. But what I need to do right now is I need to dry brush that. So on that note, I will bring you in a little bit again, and I'll do a bit of dry brushing. So I painted this black already. That's just straight Vallejo black. Probably use some neutral gray. You don't want to go too stark. If you use like white or really light gray, the color will just be very stark and won't look very good. But a subtle color change makes it a little bit more realistic. So for those of you who haven't seen dry brushing before, it brings out highlights. So if you see this painted all black, you kind of lose the details. It's hard to see what details are going in there. Get yourself a nice soft brush. This is an old brush I have that is all flayed out and doesn't work very well. Load the brush up. I got a piece of paper towel here, and then you just kind of unload the paint until kind of like you can see it's just leaving the slightest amount of paint. Think of it almost like a powder more than anything. And then you're just going to gently rub your brush over top of all of that detail, and it should just cause all of it to absolutely pop. The similar in shade, you keep it. If you use a light color, it doesn't take much. The slightest touch will cause it to pop the details. If you use a slightly darker shade, like here, the darker gray, or it's a medium gray, is closer in shade to the black, you can put quite a bit on here, and it really allows those details to pop out. And you'll see here in a second when I'm done how much easier it is to make those. I'll just take a look. Right, all that detail pops. You've got highlights and you've got shadows, and it looks a lot more realistic than it did as just a solid flat black option. I mean, the perfect example, if you've seen that Vanta black, it's so dark, it absorbs all the light. You lose all the detail. In models, you don't want that. You want to see the details. So you kind of got to take a little bit of artistic license and do stuff like that to make that detail pop. So now you can kind of see when you mount it inside the frame, you're going to actually see all of that detail on the turret, and it's going to be a very, very nice look when hopefully, if I can get this clear perspex to fit properly. And then I still have to make all this fit into the back of the B-24, which is going to be fun. You can already see. So part of the issue, I can't actually. I've got it all masked off for painting. See? I can't show you. So part of the issue, you've got the shape of the rear fuselage here where the tail turret is supposed to fit, right? And that's one shape. And then you've got the turret base itself, which was perfectly round. And the opening in the back of the B-24 wasn't perfectly round. It was squared on the sides. So that took a little bit of modification. And you can see from the turret shape, it's almost like a bulge. It's pinched at the back, and then it flares out in this bulged shape, which isn't round. So when you go to mount the turret perspex, it doesn't line up properly. It ends up flaring out in the front and doesn't touch in the corners. Out here you can specifically see this curve. It doesn't want to fit properly. It's just a mess. So I'm really going to have to, like I said, play. I'm going to have to get this super glued in place, fill all these gaps with white glue, try to sand off this little flared bottom part to get the turret to the right shape, and then get it in place. But I can't do any of that till I paint the fuselage because I need the masking off. So there's a critical order of operations that you need to be aware of when you're doing stuff like this, and it kind of sets the tone. So I think I will try to get this Perspex glued on, cleaned up, masked off, and painted, and then I'll leave it, and I'll do the final fit once I get all the paint removed. Yeah, as I said, I don't think this video is going to take quite as long as I thought it would. It's already been half an hour, and I don't have a whole lot left. The big thing I wanted to show you was the wood graining, prepping that turret. I do have things like, well, one of my nose gear doors fell off. I've got the landing gears prepped and ready to go. I don't actually. Nose gear, see, I'll have to glue the nose gear. That's the rear door, which is prepped already. The nose gear has been cleaned up. The main gears need to be cleaned up. The tire needs to be glued together. And then right now I'm going to, I really don't like having this out. I like to clean that, but that's going to take some time, and I don't want to walk away from the camera to clean that. So that's going to have to wait. What I do need to do though is, let's pull some of my sprues out here, and I will start trimming some parts, and we'll wrap up this video with just some general prep work for the painting process. I'm going to have to start soon. Yeah, okay, I'll put this back. So I'm going to grab the main wheels. And it is nice, these main wheels do have a little bit of weight to them, a little bit more realistic than not having any weight. So I need those. I'm going to get the Bombay doors. I am building these with the Bombay doors open, hence why I'm taking these doors. The only downside to this kit being the age that it is there is a lot of flash on pieces. That requires quite a bit of cleanup. Now, the only other thing I need to worry about is the top turret. What do I need for the top turret? Top turret right there. I will pull those parts as well while I'm at it. So I need 43, which should be this one. And I need 42, which should be that one, yeah. And 44, that one there. Okay, that I'm prepping just so that when I do work on the turrets, I'll have all the turret pieces all kind of together at the same time. Yeah, so I'm going to get my sanding stick, and we're going to go through and do some cleanup on here. I mentioned in the previous videos, I have this, which I got from my local hobby shop, the Hobby Center. This is a nice 4-grit sponge sanding stick, and then I picked up a couple of these smaller spongy sticks that come in various grits. They're nice for getting down inside on some of the details. You'll see on things like this landing gear, this is a little much to get in here, whereas something like this, it's a lot easier to get in here and sand down the flash and the mold seams and stuff that you have on these parts. I do think I went through these already. I think part of the problem is these are just a really, really soft molding. It's really hard to see any detail on this. But yeah, it looks like I did clean these up already. It's just soft moldings, unfortunately. Yeah, so like I said, we'll get these tires. Let's see, wrong grit. It's always best to do this. I mean, if you have a massive sprue gate sticking off, you know, then trimming it with an X-Acto knife is perfectly valid. But as you get closer, you don't want to try to shave with an X-Acto knife when you get a small amount. It's really easy to create divots in your plastic, and then your pieces don't line up anymore. So you're much better off to get a sanding stick like this and use this to do your final sand down of your little sprue nubs to clean up. You've also, if there's any flash, you'll see if you, instead of holding it perfectly straight, go on a slight 45 and you'll kind of knock off that flash edge, and you'll see kind of where more work needs to be done versus when it's cleaned up and it just falls together. Also be careful when you have pieces that have locating pins. You don't want to sand those locating pins off. They're quite important for locating the part properly. It's very easy to sand those off by mistake, and then your part will end up not fitting properly. So you can already see with that, if you get the halves, how not even close to being lined up on that one. Get the locating pins lined up. It will still need a quick sand at the end to knock that ridge down, but you can see how well that fits together when you put all that together. Yeah, it's gonna look good. The other one of the reasons I wanted to get these wheels ready is this hub will be painted white, and I wanted to get that painted white before. The other side will be aluminum. Same with this part of the landing gear will be aluminum, and I think the leg is aluminum. But I wanted to get this hub painted white, and I'll do that before I paint the tire black, because it's easier to paint black over white than it is to paint white over black. So again, critical path is important when you're planning how to do your model, to make sure you don't build yourself into a corner. So always good to look at your instructions, plan ahead. That note, I do have one of the I forget where I learned it. It was on another YouTube channel. It's a artistic planning program called Millinote. I do have I think I'll put a link down below if I remember. It's really cool. It allows you to use a free account. There's no cost required, but it gives you, you're able to have notes and pictures, and you can link things and flowcharts, checklists. It's a really, really, really cool free online kind of project planning software, and it's a huge help. I started using it a while ago, and it has definitely helped me kind of keep track of things. When I have it, there's an app on my phone, and this is not sponsored at all, so don't get the wrong idea. It's just something that I started using after hearing about it on another YouTube channel, and it was a huge help. Like I said, there's an app on my phone, so I'll be out and about. Like I'll just be sitting somewhere or looking at some pictures or whatnot, and I'll have an idea, like, oh, I need to make sure I do this or that, or check this or check that. I can jump on the app and I can add it to my project flow, and I don't forget about it. And it's actually been a huge help to keep track of stuff. So I'll try to remember to put a link down below if any of you want to give it a shot. I highly recommend it. Again, not sponsored, just something that I really enjoy using. But yeah, so that's where I was going to say, like, it's really important to get kind of a critical path figured out. If you don't want to build yourself into a corner. So if you have to do one thing before another, make a note of that, write that down, figure that out early, so that as you're building, your life gets a little easier. These parts here are going to be a bit of a pain. I don't want to sand off the rivet detail, but I need to get all of this flash off and square them up. So these are the Bombay doors. For those who might not know, with the B-24, they had like a roller style door. like a garage door for bomb bays. And that was simply because the aircraft itself sat so low to the ground. It had tricycle gear, and the nose gear is really short, and it caused the aircraft to sit really low to the ground. And so a classic standard bomb bay design wouldn't work. If your bomb bay doors opened in a standard kind of format, you would hit the ground. So these actually like garage door rolled up the side of the fuselage. And so these would sit, I think I had it right the first time, I think they sit something like that along the side of the fuselage. But being an older kit, these have a raised rivet detail on the side that I don't want to lose, so I have to be careful when I sand these. There's also some, actually maybe I did have it right, it might go this way. Anyways, so yeah, I'll have to clean these up a little bit. There is a little bit of flash on the back, and there is some ejector pin markings that are causing them to sit a little funky. But that also means you got to be careful when you paint, because once again, going back to this amazing reference book, you'll be able to find some pictures of some heavily used Liberators, and you'll actually see how the doors have a different weathering pattern from the rest of the airframe. Not as easy to find as I thought it would be. I mean, here's a good example. Before I break something. Right? So you have the doors when they're closed, their color is slightly different from the rest of the airframe because the doors would roll up and down, and sometimes they're open and the staining would happen, or they're closed and the staining happens, so it changes the way that it's staining and weathered. And you'll see how the weathering kind of comes out of the back. So it's good to get that set up because you can paint the doors separately and then glue them on after the fact, and then you get that slight variation in the weathering patterns around the doors, which, you know, every little tiny bit that you can do to make it look interesting is worth it. Now also you have to keep in mind that these did fly over the Atlantic. Salt water is not good for any type of metal, aluminum included. So these were washed down somewhat regularly to get the salt residue, especially flying at low altitudes. You'd get salt residue on the airframe. They would be hosed down. Later on, you get things like the bird bath, where they had hoses and nozzles built into the ground, and they would turn on and they would taxi the plane through this like sprinkler system to wash that salt and stuff off a plane. But at this time, they would have just used hoses or mops and buckets and wash the surface down to get that salt residue off the airframe to limit corrosions. Also note, it was wartime, so preserving the airframe wasn't necessarily the most important part of their day, but it was done when needed. So again, it will alter the, you know, weathering look of an aircraft. So it's worth getting a book like that, having your references, you know, building to a certain look. Find something you like that's a historical picture and kind of build to that, paint to that, weather to that, and then you have a goal set and you have something that's based on reality. Now, that again, it's a model. Build it however you want. If you want to paint it bright pink, go right ahead. It's your model. But just be aware of what you're doing and make sure you have a goal. Plan ahead. Everything will turn out a lot better when you have a plan. The one thing I like with this green plastic is it's very easy to see where you've sanded and where you haven't. The plastic changes color to a very light pale green where you've sanded versus the darker green of where you haven't. So that helps. You can see there as I'm sanding that ejector pin marking is higher than the surrounding plastic, and that's what you got to be careful of when you're doing this, is you don't want that ejector pin to push out off of your plane and change the angle that the door sits. So that's how are we for time? My watch doesn't off. 2108. So that, pretty much ready for paint. That needs another coat. Those need to be cleaned up. These I will put aside because they're going to be painted black. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up by... I still have to clean all my brushes and it's late, so definitely going to be keeping this short. So I'm just going to take a quick sip of 7-Up. That's a bit better. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I'm just going to glue these wheels together. Get that out of the way. And then, yeah, we'll call it because I'm tired. I've already worked today. I've already finished off a 12-hour shift today, and I'm still doing this, but I just wanted to get it done. Move on to the next step and get some paint down. Okay, so get these wheels. There we go. That's not right. Something's not right here. I think I missed a pin. What is happening here? There we go. Okay. Get another one of these done. And then one last one. And I'll get these clamped. And then I'll hit it with some liquid glue. I think I want to call it. But yeah, this is also, you just want to be careful, especially if you're using this thicker, the white cap Tamiya glue. It is thick and it's really easy to get some on your hands. And then you're going to touch the model and you're just going to leave a fingerprint in the side of the plastic. So it's always best to just use a little bit of that, especially around pins, locating pins, and anywhere that's kind of a critical surface that you want to have glue on. And then a little bit of pressure with the clamps. That'll make sure that white glue will bond nicely. And I'll go around the seam with a little bit of liquid glue. So you get the Tamiya extra thin. I mean, you can use any. I know there's Mr. Hobby makes a bunch of these, but any liquid glue is fine. And you just get in here and you let it capillary around that seam. What you want to be careful of, especially if you're using any type of tape, clamps, if you get this glue along that, it's just going to capillary down along the side of that clamp, and it is going to leave ugly marks on your plastic. Same with tape. If you ever tape anything, if you touch it to the edge of the tape, it's just going to run along the side of that tape, and it's going to be a very, very bad day. So just apply your glue around that seam. It'll capillary down inside the seam, and we'll give it a nice strong bond. Depending on what you build, there's a couple of people out there who will tell you to apply your liquid glue after. Depending on the model and the cleanup, sometimes I will apply the liquid glue and then squeeze the clamps. And while that will cause the glue to squish out and can cause your plastic to kind of form a ridge, depending on the kit, that might be the better option. I prefer that in some cases because I can sand that ridge down and it limits the amount of filler I need. Whereas in other cases, you know, sometimes you want to have an indent, add filler and sand. Sometimes you want to go proud and you can sand that ridge off. It literally just depends on the kit and what your ultimate goal is at the end. So, but that's experience. That's where eventually you'll start to figure out which way you want to go to get what look. question is now, do I glue this together now or do I wait? It's all going to get painted black. And I don't want it built in the way that the guns will traverse. I will glue the guns down solidly. So, let's see here. That goes like that. That goes like that. There's a pin there. That goes like that. That located pin locks in. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to glue this together too. This turret's all going to get painted black. So I'm just going to glue this all together. I can hit it with the airbrush after the fact and then do all the weathering. So just because I know I had you zoomed in, you might have missed that. The top turret comes in 3 parts. There's kind of the thicker ring, a thinner ring, and then the actual 2 machine guns that are mounted on a frame. So what happens is you take your turret, and I just lost the orientation. I should have planned that out a little better. So they face away from the notch. So there's this notch at the back, and the turrets face away from the notch. The guns, I should say, face away from the notch. So the pins, the hinge pins on the side of the guns fit into those little pockets. Oh, it doesn't want to work, I don't think. What's happening here? Okay, so it is effectively idiot-proof because I got it backwards. Okay, so the pin, the little hinge parts, you'll see they're not centered. And so you want the body of the machine guns facing back in the bigger parts. You'll see how that fits in there nice, and the guns can hinge. If you put it the other way, the guns don't come all the way down. The bodies of the guns, the breeches, hit the back of the turret. So that makes life easy. It's effectively idiot-proof. You cannot install the machine guns the wrong way. So that goes into this, and now this thicker ring has 2 big pins that lock those machine guns in place, and then there's a smaller locating pin that fits into a hole and locks all that together. So you can see how all you have to do is just slide that turret in place. And I'm going to glue it in place, as I mentioned, because I don't want the... I can't. I might need to move the guns to mount it into the perspex. Again, that is something I just know from experience, that sometimes in order to fit the clear part, you have to tilt the machine guns, feed it in, and then you can come back afterwards and glue the turret in place. But yeah, so I'm just going to apply some glue around the base of this ring. I know there's the 3 places where the locator pins will go in. And then there's some nice big flat plastic plates that should hold the glue quite nicely. And then we'll get those in. Something like that. And that's it. What I'll do in this case, I'll put the machine gun straight up, and I'll use some of these clamps, one on the back and one on the front, and that will hold the 2 halves. If I can get that to grab on properly. Ooh, it's not happy. Let's try one of these guys. Oh, that's not happy either. Yeah, there we go. Do it that way. So what if I do this guy? I do it sideways. Will that be happy? There we go. That's happy. So there. I'll get that clamped. I'll let that dry. I'll come back and I'll hit it with some liquid glue after. Everything's too close. I'm afraid of the glue running up around the clamps. So I'll just leave that as it is. Come back after with the clear coat. So, or the clear, the liquid glue, sorry, the extra, to me, extra thin, and allow that to capillary around that turret after the fact. So, quick recap of where we are. So, fuselage and the wings are ready for paint. The torpedo pieces, the front piece and the tail wooden pieces, I've done the first round of wood grain. If you are joining me now and you missed that, go back to the beginning of this video. You'll see me doing this wood grain with some oil paints. And then I have the finished ones that I did off camera previously as an example. So I got that done. I had the tail turret, which was previously painted. I weathered. That will then be assembled up off camera. I prepped the bomb bay doors and the wheels and this top turret, effectively getting ready for paint. That's going to be the next big thing. So I'm probably going to paint the white areas of the fuselage and wings off camera, and some point in January we'll come back and I'll just zoom you guys back out a bit. We'll come back some point in January and we'll have the white all done, and then we'll go through and we'll mask all the white areas off and prepare to do camouflage. I think that's where we'll end this video and come back for that. So as I said, off camera, we'll finish prepping everything and we'll get ready, and I'll get the white paint done, and then we'll come back and you'll see the prep for camo. I think that's a good plan. If any of you out there have seen anything here that you want to know more about, techniques, any of that stuff, leave a comment on the video. You can reach me on my Facebook page. Double check the tips and tricks videos. Most of the skills I'm using now, I have a tips and tricks video already out. It's in a playlist on this channel. You can see the basics of how I do what I do. And again, any more specific questions, by all means ask. I will gladly explain to you or create a tips and tricks video to show you what I am trying to get across. Yeah, I also, considering we're getting ready for paint, part 1 of the time-lapse builds for the 3 kits I'm working on, the Dash 8, the Albatross D5, and the Fokker DR1 should also be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And then this build, all of the offline work I've done will be also released as a time-lapse video. So you'll get to eventually see the entirety of this build. All of these live stream builds, plus the time-lapse of the off-camera work. So as I said, I will wrap it up. It is very late and I need to get some sleep tonight. So thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you all next time.